If I could describe the terror inside when I think about doing this for the rest of my life. And though I know I should be happy for what I've got, I'm not. I'll go and leave it all behind me. If I'm smart, no one will ever find me. It takes everything I've got to be something I'm not, to smile when I feel like crying. And though they all tell me this is the life, oh, this feels like dying.
Great. Good job. All right. So this is about public space. I'm ready. Hit it. Okay, so I want to start off with some icons of public space. Number one, who I never had the good fortune of meeting Leslie, but I think he represents both the myth of Austin and a lot of the values that the best of Austin stands for, which are things like tolerance, openness to new ideas, creative and expression, and happiness. So here's the other paradigm of public space. Rome, this is the Noli map from the 18th century. And the big idea here is that the negative space is more important than the positive, meaning that the spaces in between the buildings are the things that get shaped, and the buildings don't really matter. Now, contrast that with the plan for Austin. This is the 1838 Waller plan. It's a completely universal grid. There's no differentiation, especially in relationship to how it treats nature. The grid just plows through Waller Creek on the right and Shoal Creek on the left as if they weren't even there, right? And we've sort of taken this attitude in Austin ever since. And this is, the pillars of progress, the car. It's all about separating people and keeping people apart. And I think we're at a moment where we can start to change that. And here is a new model, right? And we have the good fortune in Austin of having this incredible natural resource in the form of its creeks, and Waller Creek is one of them, and it runs right through downtown, and it's a provocation about how do we redefine new kinds of public space that can serve Austin going into the future. It's right in the middle of downtown, but it means it's also right in the middle of the entire city, and so the idea of creating a new space that's both a connector and a destination for all of Austin. A little off on my timing. So the vision for Lower Waller Creek, which runs from the lake to 15th Street, is a chain of parks. So there's a connective trail that's built around the creek itself, and there are a series of parks along the way. And I think the combination of the connector and the destination in forms of the parks is really like the secret sauce. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts because it's the ability to unite people and bring people together. This is what we're responding to. Unfortunately, despite the beauty of the creek, it is very violent, and it is subject to these incredible events that cause bad things to happen. So the city has undertaken to build a flood control tunnel, which both alleviates the flooding issues, but on the other hand, it does this incredible thing because it pumps water back up, right? Which means that the creek will always have water flowing in it. And what that means is that we can actually create a vibrant, healthy, living, natural artery in the middle of the city because we control the water. And so the idea here is not that the natural and the man-made are two separate realms. They're one. It's a managed relationship where we use engineering to support nature in the middle of the city. This is here, and we have to support it. The one thing we have to do is we have to make it legible to people. We have to invite people in. Right now, when I first came to Austin, I couldn't find Waller Creek. You just drive right across it, you don't even know where it is because they have these embankments that are built up on both sides and you never see it. Nobody knows it's there. What we need to do is open it up to the city, basically. And the flood control tunnel allows us to do that. We can basically bend down the stream banks, open up the creek to the adjacent spaces, to the city, to these parks that it connects along the way, so people can actually engage it, be in it. While they're in the city, they're also in nature. And that sort of critical combination is our future. The other thing that this is about people, and this is what I'm going to say, is like, the beauty of parks is that they allow these places that are free and open to all and allow people to come together. So this is a place of culture as well. We anticipate having musical events up at Waterloo Park, but it's also a place just for gatherings, right? I mean, this is the sort of the crux of our civil society, creating places where people can bump into one another and be together outside in public space where it's free. Now, I'm going to draw a little bit on some of the experience we had from the High Line because I think the beauty of that is that, you have to design spaces as open platforms because you can design them however you want, but as soon as you open to the public, people are going to use them the way they want to use them. And from this, they use them, they do everything, right? They work on their laptops, they kiss, they make out, right? Everything. They do crazy stuff. It becomes basically a platform for performance. So people are performing for other people. The public becomes an open stage. And that's what we want Waller Creek to be as well. It's a place to bring people together where they can basically commune in a public setting. It expands beyond into the city beyond it. So this is a view of the Standard Hotel, which is directly adjacent to the High Line. And what started happening is that guests in the hotel started performing for people on the High Line itself, right? And it became this crazy urban myth, and it started with, just strip teases, and then it became other things. And then this woman actually started putting on cabaret shows. This is about 20 feet from the High Line itself. And she said, look, you're bringing all these people adjacent to my house. Well, I'm going to give you a show. And it started out, she just got out there, gave a show, and then soon enough, people started showing up. And so it was urban theater in the making in real time. And what this does, when all these things start to happen, where you start to engage the public, not just in programmed ways, but in spontaneous ways, is that people begin to see their city in a new way. They bring a new lens to the city that they inhabit, and it changes everything else that they do, not just in this place, but in all places. And we're doing that already. We're doing it right now in Waller Creek. This is my shameless plug for Creek Show. It's coming up a couple weeks, November 12th, 21st. Be there. It's going to be phenomenal. For those of you that went there last year, I'm sure you loved it. It's going to be better this year. It's up for 9 days. Don't miss it. It's going to be terrific. Thank you.
All right. Hi, guys. All right, I guess I'm starting. This is me, dun, dun, dun. In 2004, the very weekend I decided I was going to move to Austin, I'm here with my best friend, Troy. We were journalism students at the University of Missouri, and we were inseparable. We did everything together, including drive all night to check out this little music festival in Austin we'd heard about. Little did I know that 2 years later, he would die in a car accident, and that my world would be turned completely upside down. When he passed away, I was living in Austin. I had found myself a boyfriend and a part-time copy editing job at The Statesman, and after his death, a vicious sadness took over my life, and I was so consumed with grief that I didn't realize I was 2 months pregnant. And when I finally figured it out 2 months later, I had a big decision to make. I could either face it or turn away. As you can see, my boyfriend at the time, Ian, and I decided to have that baby, and and face this wolf, this unknown. We had no idea what to expect. And a little note about that. Oh, don't we look tired here? This was actually my very first picture that ran in the newspaper, if you can believe it. But we decided to do this. We took this crazy leap of faith that we could come together and make something beautiful out of something that was really tragic. I felt like I was both driving the car and holding on for dear life. It was really terrifying. But we pulled on our boots and we got to work at being happy. And it was hard. Things were rough between Ian and I, but we were both growing in our own ways, and that was all that mattered. A year later, I faced a totally different kind of challenge, but it came disguised as a prize. Ian had lovingly nominated me for What Not to Wear, a little television show you might have seen. And to do the makeover, I would have to throw away all my clothes, but I would get a free trip to New York and $5,000 to start over. So how bad was it? How bad was my style? This is a skirt made out of a tablecloth. They showed that one on national TV. But the truth of the matter was that I loved being thrifty, but I also felt like, as a good feminist, I had to reject standards of beauty. And the show really forced me, I did choose to go onto the show, and it forced me to face this reality that we do judge one another based on how we look. So I started dressing better at the newsroom. I was terrified at the power that tingled on my fingertips when I maybe every once in a while would be the best dressed person in the room. But in the newsroom, that wasn't very hard. Sorry, Jorge. And it gave me the confidence to apply for the food writing job that Katy had occupied for many years. And for some reason, I have no idea still to this day, they hired me. And within a year, I'm on a freaking billboard, freaking out because I am a new mom. I'm 25 years old. I have no cooking skills beyond the everyday cook, but I knew how to ask questions, and that was my strength. So I went wherever people were cooking and eating and loving food. That meant H-E-B. I worked a shift as a cashier at H-E-B for a story. I made Pfeffernuss cookies with readers. I started connecting with people online, and this is where my next big hurdle came, and this was embracing this scary world of social media, which, at the time, bloggers were not considered people that you wanted to associate with. And so what I did was I chose to connect with them. I tweeted with them. I tweeted about my grandmother. I decided to put myself out there in a way that I had never been comfortable doing before. In fact, I was the first person to say I'm never joining Facebook, and then lo and behold, Facebook became my job. Blogging, was considered a bad word, and I was advised don't get too close. And so what did I start doing? Organizing potlucks and happy hours and creating a space for this online community to build an offline camaraderie. And that ended up leading to a book we published in 2013 called the Austin Food Blogger Alliance Cookbook. That's a community cookbook, much like those that have been published for 150 years by similar groups like ours. Really, being close with bloggers has changed my career in a way I never could have even imagined. So all this time, I was doing the juggle. I had another baby at the time. I was doing my best to raise them so that they would love fried chicken and kombucha, trying to keep them from bumping their heads and trying to keep me from bumping mine. And somehow I had managed to hold it all together, except for one really big thing. And that was that I couldn't stay married to their dad. And this was the hardest challenge yet, to figure out how to confront a challenge that didn't come to me and force me to face it. I had to turn to it and say, this is not working, and sort of be the one to instigate it in the first place. We ended up divorcing last year, but have found a much more loving and supportive relationship as co-parents. But since the split, I've had to figure out how to be a single mom and provide my kids the same opportunities and experiences that I had with two married parents, going camping and on long road trips without electronic devices, because I'm that kind of a mom. And then the other half of the time, I'm learning how to be a single person in this awesome city with actual alone time and going on actual happy hours and having hobbies and watching too many hours of Scandal, and it's amazing. But the truth is, I try to tell my kids about what I'm going through and be honest with them, because I want them to have a sense that they're writing their own stories. And they understand now that even if things aren't going their way or seem out of their control, that they can still trust the process and know that they're going to learn something no matter what happens. I wanted to give a quick plug to Brene Brown and Andrew W.K., without whom none of these realizations would have happened. So this kind of takes us back to the beginning. We go back to the Cathedral of Junk, and it's amazing to see my old roomie Vinny and his unfinished masterpiece that will never be finished. He's always tearing down towers and rebuilding them, reimagining pieces into something stronger and something that reflects where he is now, not who he was before. And it reminds me that we're all on this journey, and really it's a hero's journey. And something that Joseph Campbell has said that has always stuck with me is that the adventure that the hero is ready for is the adventure that the hero will get. And these great dares are all around us, some in disguise and some pounding at the door, and we just have to find the courage to take them.
So I grew up just north of here in Leander, and as she said, I went to Texas Tech to study architecture for undergrad. And when I graduated, I moved on to this organic farm just outside of Lubbock, and lived in the trailer and worked with two designers, Jesse Vogler and Suhan Ho, who at the time had an interest in design as it related to farming culture. And we took on a project that was an all-in-one farming machine. And it would have the ability to take on all the tasks necessary for cultivation, and that it could plant and plow and irrigate and harvest the crop. And so to do this, we started to study the equipment on the farm, but we also looked at all of the different devices that surround us in our daily life, like printers and scanners. And so we developed this machine which had a triangular section that could rotate in different positions and lower and raise different farming implements into the earth to work the land. And these sections would then connect between drive units that amounted to autonomous tractors that allowed the whole machine to move back and forth across the fields, very much like the way a scanner scans a document. And so you're all probably wondering, what's this have to do with architecture? And admittedly, it doesn't have much to do with building practice. But it takes part in a rich tradition in architecture of pursuing new answers, often in spite of the right answers that can be confirmed in the back of a book somewhere. And then we explore the potential outcome of these solutions through drawing. So I left the farm and moved to the Northeast to work on my graduate studies at Princeton. And with the transition from West Texas to the Northeast came this surrounded by a new form of density that I wasn't used to. And I became fascinated with the urban density and really was interested into what the limitations of density in the city could be. So I took on this project in Manhattan, which proposed an entirely new borough of New York, all contained in a single superstructure, which was mostly made up of housing, but within it had large commercial towers that would rise up through it, a public park suspended over the city, and a whole new form of transit system to reconnect it back into the rest of the city. And so a new condition emerged. It was somewhere in between interior and exterior. And you see in this image these promenades that connected locally the interior of the project. And for most people, or for some people at least, this represents somewhat of a dystopian reality, and that very well might be true. But what it enabled me to do was explore problems that don't currently exist, and these problems became the catalyst for new ideas of how to deal with transit, or how to inhabit with housing a megastructure of this scale. And so after working on a couple projects of this larger scale, I decided to refocus back down onto a smaller scale house. And the main driving idea behind this house was a root 3 proportional system. So stay with me real quick. The root 3 proportional system is a rectangle that has such a proportion that when it's divided into 3 parts, the 3 smaller rectangles share the same proportion as the original one. And this subdivision can continue on to a smaller and smaller. And this becomes the guiding force of the design throughout the house. In plan, in elevation, in section, and it ties the entire house together. And the main organization of the house is these 2 brick trapezoids that hold the private areas of the house, the bedrooms and bathrooms. But then it's separated by this vaulted wooden structure that holds the main living areas and the dining area. And so this is from the living room looking out towards the lofted dining area. And so this vaulted structure tied together the front elevation and the back elevation. As it moved across the length of the house, it picked up and geometrically lifted and flipped over and reconnected the figure of the front elevation to the back elevation. So there was a relationship, but it showed a transformation. And so in the end, one of the interesting things about working with, rigorously working with a proportional system like this is that alignments naturally just occur throughout the design process. But the proportional system itself doesn't justify anything or make it correct. At its best, it creates problems and conflicts in the project, and these problems are demand design innovation, and it's that innovation that is the true the true value in the project. So I recently came back to Texas, and I now work at Gensler here in Austin. And we've been working on a project that we call the Orchard, and it's reimagining temporary space with a series of pods that can rapidly deploy an inflatable tree that in the daytime provides shade, but at night becomes this transformative space with interactive glowing trees. But the only problem with a project like this, when you tell someone you're going to build a giant orchard of glowing trees, well, no one takes you serious. So we set out to build a proof of concept. And we worked with an inflatable manufacturer out of Minnesota and a creative design technology studio here in Austin called Chaotic Moon to help us bring it to life. And the way we did this was this nylon canvas tree that maintained at a constant pressure of around 4 psi with a very small electric fan. And that tree was then internally tethered to an aluminum pole, which also held sensors and speakers and over 2,000 LEDs that would transform when someone would change the shape of the trunk and hug it. And so with the support of the city of Austin, we had the opportunity recently to unveil the orchard prototype at South by Southwest. And so I've shared 3 projects that existed on paper and explored new ideas through drawing on paper. But at the point at which a project can escape the bounds of paper and become a reality, that's when we have a real opportunity to gain new understanding through direct public interaction. And in the case of the Orchard project, that came in the form of a simple hug. So thank you.
I've been writing about music here in Austin for about 30 years, first as a music critic, then as a music historian. And I'll tell you the main difference is that a music critic can't be proven wrong. Like any moron could write that Lightning Hopkins is overrated, and they don't have to print an apology or a correction. But what I've done since then is I've gone more into history, and I just wrote that book, like DJ said, on All Over the Map, True Heroes of Texas Music. And I've got 40 profiles of Texas music pioneers, people such as Cindy Walker, who in the 40s as a woman from Mejia had 50 songs recorded by Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys. Before I moved to Austin in 1984, some friends sent me a copy of this album by the Jimi Hendrix of the accordion, Steve Jordan. And I listened to it, and I really wasn't that into Mexican accordion music. And so, I was more into punk rock. Like my first day in Austin, I started off on South Congress, and I walked down, and the Continental Club was there, and it said, Butthole Surfers, $3. And so within 2 hours, I knew that I had moved to paradise. But it took me a while, though, a few years to realize that Steve Jordan and the Butthole Surfers were really doing the same thing. They were coming from the same place, and not just San Antonio. They really just wanted to blow your mind. And I think Texas music is pioneer music. Like Buddy Holly and the Crickets were the first self-contained rock combo to write and produce their own hits. And in doing so, they influenced the British invasion, including a group called the Beatles, who named themselves after the Critics. And Texas is really the first place for a lot of music. Like in Austin, the 13th floor elevators invented psychedelic music back when LSD was still legal. Texas is also the home of boogie woogie piano. The first electric guitar player was T-Bone Walker. Now, the general focus of my book is on underappreciated artists, and I don't think anybody could really say Selena, who's a saint to so many, could fit in that category. But to me, she is underrated because the magic of Selena is what she was able to do live on stage, and that's gone. And you know, you can listen to the records, but it's not the same. Now, researching history about long-dead gospel and blues singers is fueled by random payoffs, much like slot machines and single bars. You run your fingers down the pages of big dusty books for hours, and you find a bit of information, a bit of new evidence, and it all becomes worth it. That's the thing that really turns me on is primary research, like I did with Blind Willie Johnson. Now, on Washington Phillips, who's another one of my 1920s gospel people, I really hit pay dirt because I found out that the guy that they had credited for making the music was actually his cousin, who died in the state insane asylum in 1939. And I was able to find that the real Washington Phillips lived to be 74 years old. Now, let me read this passage from the book, which I think kind of ties together all these musicians that are in my book. Texas is where music is made for dancing, where the rowdy, exuberant crowds have coaxed musicians to play louder, first out of necessity and later because the added power expanded the boundaries. The frontier mentality has always rewarded those who go just a little further. Money, independence, big noise, and dirt. That's Texas, a land of opportunity within the land of opportunity. It's where the South ends and the West begins, and yet Texas remains independent of those regions. Texas is a state of immigrants, with a melting pot stirred to the sounds of Cajun waltzes, polkas, honky-tonk, funk, hip-hop, Tejano, and jazz. Mexicans play German polkas, blacks play country, farm boys play jazz and rock and roll, and everyone plays the blues. And that great picture there of Waylon Jennings is by Scott Newton, who contributed quite a few pictures to the book. Great photographer. Now, this book was first written 10 years ago and published by UT Press, but I really wasn't totally satisfied with it, and I went and added 16 chapters, including one about a brother and sister from Abbott, Texas, who started playing music when she was 6 and he was 4. And tonight, Bobby Nelson, age 84, and Willie Nelson, 82, are touring the Midwest. And one of the things that I also tried to do with the book was create, there was some misinformation that I wanted to correct. Like I had a chapter on Archie Bell and the Drells, who had the great song Tighten Up. And I was later to find out that they didn't actually, the record was actually written and recorded by somebody else, and they just stepped into the studio and took over, so I wanted to correct that. Now, when you work at a newspaper, as I did for 20 years, you've got to have diversity at the top of your mind at all times. Like I once did a story on, for Father's Day on 5 fathers whose kids also played music, and I knew I had to have a black family, I had to have a Hispanic family, I had to have a family where a female is a child. And with Texas music, diversity just takes care of itself. You don't have to manufacture it. And the picture you just saw was Lydia Mendoza, and this is the Ghetto Boys, my favorite rap group. They pushed the envelope of bad taste so far that it required extra postage. Now, there are only 2 kinds of music, Townes Van Zandt famously said many times, the blues and zippity-doo-dah. The music drives the research, and when you hear the real stuff, your work becomes like inflating a jumpaline with a bicycle pump. You just keep at it when others might give up. The great Ella Mae Morse, the first white person to have a hit record singing black without blackface, was one of the many subjects of the book I interviewed before she passed away. Now, she was no Iggy Azalea. She learned at the feet of black people playing music as a 10-year-old in Paris, Texas. The blues just engulfed her. Now, the music that took over my life in 2000 and really started the book was the Soul Stirrers. Now, a lot of people know the Soul Stirrers as the band that Sam Cooke was in before he became a pop superstar. But before that, they were from Trinity, Texas, and the singer was Rebert Harris. He pretty much showed Sam Cooke how it was done. And the last chapter of the book counts down the 45 greatest Texas songs of all time. And number 1, in my mind, was He Stopped Loving Her Today by this kid from Beaumont, Texas. George Jones grew into the Frank Sinatra of country music, and I'd like to think that I've grown up as well, from a critic to a historian. I used to love the nights and hate the mornings, and now it's the other way around.
A conductor is one who channels a composer and communicates the composer's message. So why did I want to become a conductor? My father was born in the Philippines in 1903. He couldn't carry a tune if his life depended on it, but he was fanatic about hi-fi equipment. And that's where my obsession with music began. To this day, I'm an avid collector of LPs, CDs, and practically anything concerning music. My dad's record collection was eclectic, classical, Broadway shows, lots of easy listening, basically anything that had a hummable tune. He was, however, a horrible communicator unless he was angry. So, I believe my early years were tempered and formed by an urge to communicate and to do so in a constructive way. Music gave me that opportunity. By the age of 6, I became a member of the boys and men's choir at St. Matthew's Cathedral in Washington, D.C. The choir director there, Mr. Eugene Stewart, became the grandfather figure in my life. He taught me the fundamentals of music. He once allowed me to conduct the choir, and the seed was planted. Now, in a moment of kindness, my dad brought home this record I had pleaded for after seeing the band on The Ed Sullivan Show in February 1964. And from that time, the electricity of rock music entered my bloodstream. And I love pop music as much now as then. But when I was 9, the TV was on that Sunday afternoon and tuned to CBS, where Leonard Bernstein conducted a young people's concert with the New York Philharmonic from Lincoln Center. Little did I know how Bernstein was to become my musical father, a man who oozed music and communicated his love of music, a love of conducting, a love for teaching, and a joy of sharing that enthusiasm for not just the youngsters in the audience, but for everyone watching that program, especially me. I knew immediately what my life's profession would be. Well, I became obsessed with conducting. The public library nearby had one book about conducting, The Grammar of Conducting, by Max Rudolph, a mind-numbing series of diagrams, charts, and explanations as to what to do with your hands and how to dissect a musical score. John Mitchell, my high school band director, took me under his wing as well, giving me my first conducting gig as a basketball pep band director. I was in charge of programming the music, classics like 25 or 6 to 4 by Chicago, the theme from Shaft by Isaac Hayes, and endless marches. But the thing that bound these 3 musicians together in my life is they not only led their conducting lives with joy and passion, but they did so in a loving way, and they fostered my intense desire to emulate them. As a teen, I spent as much time away from my home as possible, entrenched in whatever musical activities I could find. I pestered the local youth orchestra conductor enough until he took me on as an assistant. I conducted summer youth theater orchestras, concerts at churches, anything, have baton will travel. Now here I am now nearly 50 years later doing what I've always wanted to do. These are 8 of the most famous musical notes ever written. Ba-ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba-ba. Why was Beethoven so forceful, angry, determined at the beginning of his 5th symphony? And why by the symphony's end is the music joyous, victorious, life-affirming? What happens over the course of those 35 intervening minutes? Well, my job is to find the answers to those questions, to interpret these inked symbols through insight and research, and to communicate those answers to the players before me and in turn to the audience behind me. The answers aren't easy to come by since the majority of music I conduct is by dead composers. It's frustrating not being able to ask Beethoven what he was trying to say, but I live and breathe this challenge. I love the nitty-gritty work of rehearsing an orchestra and making informed decisions as to how we're going to make that particular piece move the audience. After spending anywhere from a week to a year learning a score, I develop an interpretation. I go over it and over it to be sure it's in my bones. Only then do I allow myself to hear recordings of other conductors leading the same piece. I learn a lot from the interpretations of others, if only to confirm what feels right and what doesn't. Connecting as closely as I can with composers of the past and present motivates and excites me and feeds my desire to learn. Collaborating with people who make the music inspires me. Being close to people in this way inspires me. Conducting is the only thing I know that occupies my brain and my body so much that I lose myself in the music. I am so moved by the emotional outpourings of composers and their desires to share them with us. It matters to me that the message of the music goes through all of you as much as it does me, and that it keeps on exciting us in the future. It's a lifeline that keeps us connected as humans. The opportunities I've had to collaborate with the world's greatest artists like Itzhak Perlman in the classical field and others in pop fields makes the job so rewarding. Working towards a common goal with the best minds in music provides a chance to learn even more about music and about each other. All these people that have been so influential in my life occupy me every time I step on the podium. They inspire me to do the very best I can to excite and communicate with you, despite the fact that I turn my back on you to do my work. Instrumentalists, dancers, and singers have taught me so much about what music is and what life is all about. Communication, collaboration, and making music for an eager audience are why I do what I do. The ability to appreciate the sounds of music is a gift, but to share music is a greater one. Thank you so much.
It takes something special to ride the Big Bend Ranch Rodeo, a paycheck stub from a working ranch. A ranch rodeo is different. It's not like Rodeo Austin. It's just real cowboys and real cowgirls using the skills that they use in their day jobs. So you won't see bull riding at a ranch rodeo. That's the silly part of rodeo. Instead, what you'll see is fearless 70-pound girls and their horses bring a 700-pound steer to a standstill. To me, that's more interesting. So I've been shooting the ranch rodeo for 6 years now, and it took folks a while to warm up with me. Clearly, I'm all hat and no cattle. And you can see in these little rascals' expressions, they don't quite trust my being there. So they all wear Lee jeans, pressed. Their shirts are pressed. I wear, pretty much as you see me, Levi's and my shirt out. And I don't have a belt buckle that says that I want a rodeo. Belt buckles are like medals. Western hats are a secret language that I've yet to decode. But people accept me because the photos I take are useful. They wind up on the website. They're used in promotional material. I give away photos all the time. The organizers asked for a copy of this photo because the young lady, the young rider in the picture was killed shortly after the picture was taken. Cowboys are mythic. They're stoic, they're serious, they're straight shooters in word and deed. This is Chris Lacey, the owner of the storied Coconut 06 Ranch that runs from Alpine, Texas, 25 miles up to the rugged Davis Mountains. This is Rhodey Lewis. Rhodey is a ranch hand at the Coconut Ranch. The myth sort of falls apart here. Cowboys are supposed to, they don't die, they ride off into the sunset. Well, Rhodey lives with end-stage renal disease. He has to drive 3 hours, 3 days a week to get treatment because he has no kidneys. That's 20 hours a week he could be spending with his family, but it keeps him alive so he can ride horses, train horses. He starts them is what it's called. Working, you've heard of the horse whisperer. It's the same thing. I've seen him work. It's very gentle. And his family suffers. So what they're trying to do is build a home dialysis room. They need $15,000 to do it. And cowhands are poor as church mice unless they make it on the rodeo circuit. So we started talking about ways that we could raise money for Rhodey. He's a proud man. He won't accept anyone he won't accept charity. He won't accept his friends doing a fundraiser for them. If we started a GoFundMe page, he could probably raise the money in a month, but he doesn't want to do that. He wants to pay for the addition and the equipment himself. So we started talking about taking his story and selling it as a testimonial to a big pharmaceutical company that makes all the drugs that Rhodey takes. Now, if there's one thing that I've learned in my 16 years serving on the board of the Austin Advertising Federation and 12 years as volunteer marketing director for the Hill Country Ride for AIDS, if you need help, ask for it. Someone will step up. Austin is special that way. So that's what I'm doing now. If anyone here in this room tonight has experience working with a big pharmaceutical company and knows the culture, knows how decisions are made, knows how we might be able to sell Rhodey's story as a testimonial, and all the use rights fees would go to Rhodey and his family, please come talk to me afterwards. It's a bit of a mystery, a black box to me, so I need your help. And I know somewhere in this room there is someone who can do that. Yeah, Mia's going to be a real cowgirl. Well, she is a cowgirl already. You can tell I got ahead of my storyline just a little bit. I owe Rhodey a lot. My hat's off to that man. I subscribe, I buy spreads in the workbook. The spread with his photo that you saw getting on the horse in the morning, that brought a national campaign for Nakona boots. And McGarrett Jesse, creative director James Mikas actually used to ride Ranch Rodeo. He's got the belt buckle to prove it. He hooked me up with a Yeti production team. So that's a sweet account as well. I owe Rhodey. I want to give back to this family. So if you want to see some real rodeo, authentic, the way it's done on the ranch, head to Alpine, Texas, about 5.5 hours on I-10. It's 10 degrees cooler than it is in Austin in August, and the mountains, the Davis Mountains, are just spectacular. So polish up your boots, put on your hats, tuck in your shirt, or not. Folks are friendly. They'll accept you pretty much as you are. And if you're a little concerned about the culture gap, you can always tell people that DJ Stout is an Alpine homeboy. He wrote a book about the Alpine Cowboys baseball team, plus all his years at Texas Monthly give him considerable street cred in Alpine, Texas. So when you go out, you tell folks, you and DJ are like that. They'll treat you like family.
Hi everyone, I'm Isabella, and first off I want to say it's such an honor to be here. I've always loved everything creative. I've been selling my paintings for as long as I can remember, since I was very young, and about 5 years ago I started a fashion line that incorporates art into my fashion. I'm also currently a full-time student at Parsons School of Design. I don't know if creative people are born that way, but I do think creativity is a skill that can be developed. Creative people learn to see the world in different ways, and that can bring benefits in unexpected places. I've been so lucky to have the opportunity to explore my passion from an early age. Our brain likes to simplify and categorize. It makes symbols for everyday objects because it doesn't want to spend a lot of energy over analyzing everything. It creates internal symbols for external objects. This is how we make sense out of things, without overthinking everything constantly. Our brain also fills in gaps when things don't make sense. For example, we have an area in our retinas where there are no light receptors. We literally have a blind spot in our field of vision, and yet we're not walking around seeing this. Our brain is able to fill in the gaps and create what we see. And as beneficial as this obviously is, it also means that what we're experiencing is an interpretation of reality, not reality itself. When I was around 4, these were some games I used to play. I would replicate the meaningless squiggles you see above and try my best to replicate them down below. Obviously, the brain doesn't have a symbol for a squiggle, and copying it forces us to actually observe. Another way to bypass what the brain is telling us is to try to see light, colors, and shapes instead of objects. This is a very early self-portrait where I think I was starting to learn how to do that. And to this day, I'm still trying to draw what I actually see versus what I think I see. It's always an ongoing struggle, and I think anyone who draws can relate. Another way to look for negative space around an object instead of focusing on the object itself. I don't remember drawing this because I was very young, and I don't know how successful it really was, but I do know that doing this exercise is very popular for seeing negative shapes and really getting out of your own head. Finally, another method for taking meaning away from what we're seeing is to draw images upside down. This is a really well-known method for making people better at drawing, and it's very effective. Focusing on abstract things bypasses our brain's desire to give meaning because they have no meaning. It avoids the conflict between external objects and our internal symbolisms, once again. Learning technique is very important, but so is practice. I remember loving color, and over the years, I played and experimented, first with acrylics, eventually with oils, and then mixed media. When I was very young, I painted a lot of flowers and animals, then portraits, and eventually fell in love with abstract art because it has no external source material, and I think that's so interesting. At some point, I also fell in love with words and how they're put together and how they sound. By that time, I was 10 and I had written hundreds of poems. And while I don't write poetry anymore, back then it was another medium through which to express myself. To me, art and fashion are very similar. They incorporate the same elements of texture, structure, color, and of course, aesthetic. For me, art and design are mediums from which to create. While the skills I learned from art have helped in many ways outside of art itself, it's also true that art does not need to be validated. I enjoy painting, drawing, and designing several times a week. There is no feeling like creating something that didn't exist before. For me, that's really gratifying. You have to create art for yourself first and not for others. This is one of my first croquis, and as you can see, it defies conventions as many artists do. I feel that artists are free thinkers who realize not everything is the way it appears, and we can do things differently. We can even make people have absurdly long necks. Understanding this can make us more likely to pursue our dreams, and in that way I feel like artists have less fear, less being the key word, not none. Last year, I presented a collection during New York Fashion Week. It's a highlight for any designer and definitely one of the biggest things I've ever done. So much time and effort went into this show, and I definitely needed all the courage I could get. Artists are used to putting their work out in front of people. It's a very vulnerable thing to do, to take something from inside of you and put it out there to be critiqued and often criticized. We have to learn to care less about outside approval and to follow our own compass. This can be invaluable when starting new ventures. To start new ventures and to accomplish our goals, we need to see the opportunities. We need to see the holes in our reality and to recognize what doesn't make sense. Artists are particularly well suited for this because we walk around our daily lives with our eyes wide open. This ability to see things from multiple angles really allows us to navigate the abstract and to identify patterns. There are very good reasons why our brain works the way they do. Without the ability to simplify and codify, our lives would be consumed by so many details. However, if we accept things at face value, the way we're hardwired to do, then how can we identify the things that need to change? I believe creative people are able to see the world in both ways. They can see beyond the obvious and create change and progress. And by the way, all the art shown here is about age 8 to 6 and under. I wanted to show you kind of where I started. I think it's more interesting to see it from sort of a younger person's point of view. To summarize, I think creativity can and should be fostered. Yes, creatives become things like artists, designers, and writers, but they also are well prepared to become things like visionaries, entrepreneurs, scientists, and innovators who are capable of changing the world. We have all heard stories about how our school systems are neglecting the arts, and I think this will cost us dearly in the future. I urge you to be an advocate for the arts in early education, and I challenge you to support a young creative. Thank you so much.
What's up, everybody? I'm probably the shortest person that's ever done this, right? Okay, let's go. Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm a son of a career soldier. There's my dad right there. He looks like an extra in like Full Metal Jacket. There's me with the scowl that I still have to this day, and my sister in the middle with a balloon. Yeah, I don't know what this is all about. My dad sent this. But anyways, this is a bricklayer. And I remember when I was in middle school, I was terrible at school. And I had to go to the counselor's office, and they told me, hey, you're terrible at school. You might want to be a bricklayer or like a mechanic, because you pretty much aren't going to amount to anything. It was weird, because like I had to walk away thinking like, hey, I'm never going to amount to anything. So when I was a kid, we used to go on these long road trips to California to visit our family. And I would just totally ignore them by just listening to music. Music was such a big deal. You know, I had a Walkman. I think I burned through like 5 of them. And then I graduated to a boombox. And I just was fascinated by radio, album-oriented rock, hip-hop, everything. I bought cassettes, CDs, and my dad bought me a radio like this when he was stationed in Germany. He sent it back home. So I still have it. It still works. So yeah, like my DJing is deeply rooted in like band. I was a trumpet player back home in Killeen. I was in marching band, jazz band, solo and ensemble. I was really serious about it. I thought I was gonna be like the world's greatest trumpet player and be famous and all that kind of stuff. And then I moved to Austin, and then I was going to hip hop shows. And this is Catfish Station on 6th Street. I don't even know what bar it is now, but there were tons of hip hop shows in the 90s. At Catfish Station. And that's when I got to meet a lot of the, DJs and hip-hop folks here in Austin, Texas. And then when I first moved to Austin, I started DJing at this place, Nasty's. And I'm there every Monday still. I don't know why I'm there, but I'm still there every Monday. It's force of habit, y'all. You need to come out. I know Monday is a hard sell. And yeah, we just play a little bit of everything. David and Rachel, who are out in the crowd, play. This is a picture from the Austin American Statesman in 1997. And yeah, it's a weird photo, isn't it? I think I look weird. Anyways, yeah, that's when I was still playing vinyl. I still play vinyl to this day, but it's with a computer. And yeah, Nasty's is a big deal. So. And then after that, I started working at Waterloo. I worked at Waterloo Records for 13 years. I was a buyer there, and I'm hanging out in the check-in room. Shout out to John Kunz, Kathy Marcus. It was a great time. I learned a lot about music. I think Nasty's and Waterloo is definitely the cradle of all the things that are happening to me now. So I've been throwing this 80s party here in town since 2000. And we're like on the 52nd one that's coming up next month. And it's just an 80s party. Everyone loves 80s music. Everyone loves to get drunk to 80s music and fall to 80s music. So, it's fun. So yeah, and then I started doing bigger shows. And this is with Snoop Dogg at South by Southwest last year. It's kind of funny because I tried to put my arm around him and he didn't want me to do that. He's like, hey, don't touch me. Not cool, dude, So yeah, that's me and Mr. Snoop Dogg over here. Speaking of dogs, this is me and my dog. And yeah, I thought it would be a good segue. So anyways, I never used to have a beard, but I messed with my dog one day, and he was just like, yo, leave me alone. And I just persisted, and he bit me. He bit me in the face, which was weird. So when I went to the doctor, they're like, yo, you have to grow out your beard. So anyways, here's ACL 2012, and I was replacing The Weeknd. So talk about playing to an aggro crowd. They hated me at first, They were like, where the hell, who is this dude? And then, maybe 10 minutes into my set, it was good. So, I've been able to apply my DJ knowledge, and I actually produce festivals with C3 Presents. I help produce and curate one of the biggest DJ stages in the United States, and this is our production crew. And I love it. It's really fun. It has something to do with DJing and not. This is my residency in Las Vegas. Look at that. I'm drinking coffee. I don't drink, but I drink a lot of coffee. And the sets are really long, so I have to drink coffee. Las Vegas is a strange place because I'm there like once a month. The normal human being goes there like once, 10 years? It's so weird. Like, you can't even eat a quiet meal. I'm addicted to Topo Chico, as you could tell. I just love it, you know. Girlfriend introduced me to it like years ago, and I've been hooked. I'm kind of semi-sponsored by Topo Chico. I think they think I'm crazy. I talk to them on the phone like maybe once a month. And yeah, I DJ for the UT athletics department. That's me DJing at a basketball game. I actually just got out of a basketball game just a minute ago, which was fun. So yeah, it's like, this opportunity gives me a chance to DJ and also experience a different world. This is me at the election night 2012 at Obama's HQ. My buddy works for Obama's advance team, and he was like, "Yo, do you want to play for Obama?" I'm like, "Sure. When do I have to be there?" "Tomorrow." And I'm like, "I'm in." So they snuck me in there, and you know, I had to play a bunch of songs, and it was amazing. That's me at the White House Easter egg roll like this past April, and that was fun. Playing for the kids. Kids are always fun. They're easy to please. And yeah, you know, the White House is no joke. I mean, security for days. You can't just run around and act silly and everything. And there I am with the first couple. Funny story about this photo. No. Let me say this. I was DJing, and like the production person's like, "Yo, like, hey, we want you to take a photo with the president. He wants to take a photo with you." I was like, "Okay." This room was like the size of like 2 football fields, and I ran. The one thing you never do is run around the president. I was running towards him, and like, I'm talking like 20 Secret Service people were like, "Who is this guy? Who is this guy?" And I was like, "I'm DJing here." And so I walked up after running and took a photo with the president and the first lady, and I was just huffing and puffing. So anyways, that's my story. Thanks, everybody. Shout out to John Kunz.
Pedia, Latin for peace, not to be confused with Pecha, is a movable type system made of 4 basic shapes and a digital typeface I built at Trinity University in 2003. I've always loved printed typography, and the digitization/preservation of it continues because I love to read. I consider people and hardware and software to make up one system. This is an early Jeff Koons installation in his Whitney retrospective last year. His best-known work is public, giant silver metallic balloon animals, dogs mainly. But this early work is so very private. This work was first shown in his apartment, not in a commercial gallery. Soft, ready-made sculptures made of air. In 2004, I helped form Open Doors Art Collective and wrapped the house I was renting, 621 Salado Street, Austin, Texas, with bubble wrap, and filled it with 7 site-specific installations of my friends, basically. We thought of this wrapping as protection, the meaning derived from the visuals, sounds, and material of international shipping and commerce, an internationalized art market. My work, Life Preserver, is a wearable installed on the population of people who attended. Very much a soft sculpture with gaming/survival mechanics. Like a plague on the party trying to survive through convincing someone else to wear it. It was hot, slow, and prevented the use of your arms. So if you were thirsty, you'd have to seek help. Obvious crowd pleaser. In 2005, we followed Barna Cantor and classes led by UT art professors Mel Ziegler and Margot Sawyer by installing large-scale artworks in the then construction site that is now the Omni building downtown. My work, Diaspora, is based on layers and organizational stickers, i.e. red dots. Soon after, a show by Jean-Claude and Christo was brought to town by the brilliant director of Austin Museum of Art, now head of Grand Rapids Museum, Dana Fries Hansen. We presented his film Islands, based on a project in Miami. I return to this film when I lose faith in art's power to influence and bring people together. You should too. So, unable to hide my enthusiasm for large scale, I worked with Arturo Palacios at the Doherty Art Center to produce a large-scale, site-specific installation art proposal exhibition. Lots of words, but what it means is very interesting sculpture based on the human scale. This was my scale model proposal for Stairway, which involved over 7,000 donated trophies screwed into perforated metal sheets and secured to a staircase 25 foot tall at the Dallas Contemporary. So many people, hundreds of people, literally helped me bring this together. It lived for 3 months as a stairway to nowhere. Then the global recession changed the art market forever. Speaking of illusions, like the art market, this illusion is called the eclipse of Mars. It will be hard to see when it comes up, so don't waste your time. There's only 20 seconds. You need about 20 minutes. But Google it on your smartphone later. The eclipse of Mars. It's an illusion, and by staring at the white dot in the center of the red circle, eventually, your eyes will adjust and you'll see a true cyan, which is unable to be reproduced by our current digital display technology. It's known as an impossible color. And I think this is interesting considering how important cyan is to print, CMYK, for everything. I would not be here without the enormous support of these two amazing people, designers, mentors from Pentagram, DJ Stout and Julie Savasky. Many of you know them and can agree that even though this is an image of their first taste of VR, the two of them have been living in a virtual reality for a long time. So yes, if you ask me, VR is more accessible than ever. The authoring tools have improved, and gaming engines such as Unity and Unigine are performant and user-friendly. This is a scale VR model of a proposed project I call cornucopian tubes. Inside each tube and within the head-mounted display, you can actually interact with a localized sound palette that you create. Notice the little man here. We'll come back to him. This is an original scale model built and exhibited in Austin at Arturo Palacios' Art Palace Gallery, but before he became an essential part of the Houston art ecosystem, promoting and building careers for Austin artists of my generation, Jonathan Marshall, Sterling Allen, Nathan Green, Ryan Lauderdale. Now, originally, the little man was sold as a wedding cake decoration, but visually he reminds me of the main character in ... an iPad app we built based on designs by Pentagram's Abbott Miller and Eddie Opara. Built for the Twice Arts Foundation, the work is fun and immersive in a way unlike any other dance piece I've ever encountered, unless maybe you consider Little Mermaid a dance piece, and it's free on the App Store to experience. Another example of my digital practice is the new helmetlang.com. I find fashion to be an amazing and dynamic industry full of people living both in the future and the present and trying to bring people along with them. And I think anyone who discounts the business minds of the fashion industry is putting themselves at a disservice. In 2008, I was deeply interested in temporary event-based installation. These works get to exist removed from the formal references of an increasingly centralized art world, and I mean that in the Howard S. Becker sense of the word. This work existed at Palmer Event Center for one night and is a clear stepping stone to my contemporary public art practice. I call this Geode and shared it using the hashtag GeodeAustin as part of my first public artwork and is now a permanent part of the City of Austin's collection. It is on view in the Northwest Greenway in Austin's Mueller neighborhood and consists of custom Arduino hardware, software, LEDs, and 19 kiln-cast glass modules built from a 3D printed mother mold. The work took 5 years to complete and is documented in a 20-minute documentary I completed last month. I find that the work is great for driving past. I find it great to walk up. And my favorite quote is when a kid came up to me and said, "The spider over there is level 1. Your piece is level 2. I seek out aquariums. I'm fascinated and I'm actively working on better understanding bioluminescence and bacteria in marine life. As a material, there's nothing closer to the metal than light generated by living organic tissue. Imagine what could be possible. And most recently, I helped the Contemporary Austin's team, Michael Henry, Heather Passanti, produce Yoko Ono's Summer Dream, an interactive piece originally shown in Stockholm in 2012 at the Moderna Museet. Yoko's instructions were clear. Let your dream come true on a distant wall. So of course we did, and is now viewable at Laguna Gloria until January 24th, 2016. My name is Hunter Cross. Thank you for your attention. Be excellent to one another, and don't be a stranger.
Once upon a time, there was a girl, and that girl was me. And she was young and single and free, and as you can see from the picture taken by the fabulous Todd Wolfson, when I was good, I was very good, and when I was bad, I was fantastic. Not actually, I stole that shirt from my sister, but I did what I wanted with who I wanted. I took care of no one but myself, and I did that but barely. I lived in conditions that most would find unlivable because I have a high squalor tolerance, and in an attempt not to have a constantly gross kitchen due to my refusal to do dishes, I created a system where I allowed myself only one plate, one bowl, one cup, one fork, one spoon, and you guessed it, one knife. It didn't work. And as anyone who knew me at that time can attest, I lived in and kind of was a mess. And then I met a man who got me, and I got him, and we fell in love and decided to get married, and then we traveled around having all kinds of adventures, and then I joined this band he was in called Asleep at the Wheel, and we traveled around the world together having adventures and playing music together, which was like this crazy cool thing. And then we had our first child, Liesel, and we decided, because we'd never been parents before, that we'd bring her on the road with us because how hard can it be, right? And we traveled around the country in a Sprinter van playing music and following the bus and having adventures. And then we had our second daughter, Willow. And even though this time we knew exactly how hard it would be, we decided to bring her on the road with us because, as my mother says, life is for living. And we traveled around the country and the world together, playing music and following the bus and having adventures. And it was great and exhausting. And then one day I stopped. I got off the road. For the first time in almost a decade, I stayed home because my daughter was getting old enough to go into kindergarten, and it was time, and suddenly I had time to think about how my life had become so enmeshed with 3 other human beings and a house and a cat, and I am not a cat person. And I realized I was more than a little weirded out by the whole life that I'd built. Like, how did that messy, solitary girl end up committed to so many other beings? And my ambivalence was equal only to the joy that I received from my family, but how could these diametrically opposed emotions live in my heart? So I decided to write some songs and try to answer that question. And what came out of me was a song cycle called Infinity Plus Infinity. The songs fashioned themselves into an arc from deeply ambivalent to deeply grateful, and now I would like to take you on that arc. Wishful. The conceit of this song is love is a drag and a shared delusion and a lie we choose, and you just have to make your peace with that. Love is such a drag, together forever, a bore. Shame. This is my response to the fact that my sex drive kicked into high gear in my mid-30s at precisely a time in my life when I was least likely to cat around. It's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair. I would have preferred this prowling, searching bodily ache in my 20s when I could have done some real damage. Stay. I wanted to capture the feeling of a really bad night, a night when your partner seems like this totally other being, and you can't help but ask yourself, how are we supposed to stay together? Runaway. The bottom of the arc, the nadir, the turning point, where I let in every bad feeling and accept that my natural reaction to all this commitment is to get the hell out. But then I make the choice to stay in. I don't want to run away. I'll stay if you'll stay. Intricate machine. How do we embark on lifelong journeys with beings we can never fully comprehend? Who are you? The only way we bridge the gaping, gasping chasm of unknowability is through love. Magic. I spent my youth searching for meaning in substances, in experiences, in places, in brief encounters, and found it when I finally decided to walk forward with another human being. And then we had kids, and the world was blown wide open. This is what they mean. This is what they mean when they say magic. And now here I am, traversing that arc daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes minute by minute, still trying to resolve the conflict between the woman with 2 kids and the husband and the house and the cat. The woman who lives in a world of we and who revels in the beauty of her family and a life lived for people who are not her. How do I resolve that with the girl who still lives in a world of me and is messy and a mess and who's not exactly sure who put her in charge? And I thought maybe through these songs I'd find resolution, but then my friend Rebecca McInroy just kind of randomly hipped me to this quote by the poet Maria Rilke, and I found my answer. I would like to beg you, dear sir, as well as I can, to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart and to try to love the questions themselves. Don't search for the answers which could not be given to you now because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now, perhaps then someday far in the future you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. So I'm here to live the question. And also I perform these songs with a band called EMQ with Lauren Gergiolo and Lindsey Green, and we collaborated with Jerome Morrison and Dom Davis to make a giant walk-in motion-controlled pseudo-holographic box that we connected the songs to, but that's a topic for a different talk. Thanks. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. This was the first song that I wrote in this series. I'd been on the road for 5 weeks, and I came home, and I'd been traveling with my family, and I was exhausted, and I decided to just write how I felt, and that kind of started this whole project. This is Runaway. If I could describe the terror inside when I think about doing this for the rest of my life. And though I know I should be happy for what I've got, I'm not. I'll go and leave it all behind me. If I'm smart, no one will ever find me. It takes everything I've got to be something I'm not, to smile when I feel like crying. And though they all tell me this is the life, oh, this feels like dying, I'll go and leave it all behind me. If I'm fast, no one will ever find me. But I kinda wanna stay. I don't wanna run away. I know I would've when I was and it's nice to talk to you. I know you feel the same way too. I know this world has us all under. So we can make a pact and keep it. This can be our little secret. I don't want to run away. I'll stay if you'll stay. I don't want to run away. I'll stay if you'll stay. I don't want to run away. I'll stay if you'll stay. I don't want to run away. I'll stay if you'll stay. Thank you, guys.